former lead minister here, and just excited for your 35th birthday celebration, anniversary. I was 2 years old when the church got started in '86, and so we're both to middle age. We're going to get over the hill, and I know there's a great future ahead for what you are going to do in this community. And so I'm grateful for the ways that you helped our family in our season here to be inspired to follow Jesus in deeper ways. And I'm prayerful and hopeful about the ways you'll continue to engage in this mission for Collin County. Collin County needs the light of the world, the church, to be all it's intended to be. And my prayer and my hope is that you'll continue in that journey. And I'm rooting you on as we celebrate 35 years.
I think that will work now. It's been a while. I had to get used to this again, right? So when Matt reached out to me a few weeks ago and asked me to speak, of course I said yes. And a couple of weeks ago, we're driving with our family in the car, and we tell our girls, hey, you know, the celebration's coming up. And they're like, yeah, well, what's going to happen that day? And my wife says, well, your dad and Miss Marty are going to speak. And they got really excited and said, wow, that's great. Miss Marty's going to speak. And so I offered to give all of my time to Marty. She said no, but Marty, you have precedence in our family. Just know that. And I'm guessing you pretty much have precedence in this church, so I'm excited to see you today. I'm excited to see so many of you. And for those of you that maybe couldn't be here and are watching online, thank you for being a part of this church and the history. 35 years. It's incredible. How do you sum up 11 and a half years that I spent with this church? By the way, I'm Greg Pirtle. I served as the student and family minister from 2007 to the end of 2018. And how do you sum up that time in just 5 or 6 minutes? Well, you can't. But you think about stories that impacted you personally. And I know for me, I remember the day that I drove over for my first ever staff meeting with the Greenville Oaks staff. And at that time, it was Marty, Adam, Vance, Keith, and Galen. And being the new guy, I just kind of sat in that meeting all day and listened and watched. And I was so excited to be there. And I was so excited about this new venture with Greenville Oaks. And we spent all morning talking. We had lunch together. And in the afternoon, the conversation turned to some more practical things. And all of a sudden, I noticed that Keith and Galen were getting a little more intense with one another. And I would call it an argument. They might disagree with me. What I would find out is that would not be the only time. In fact, by watching Adam and Vance and Marty at the time, especially watching Marty roll her eyes at them, it was obvious that this was something I was going to experience for the next few years. But looking back on that, one of the most important things about that to me, and what I could see over the next few years, is that that's a part of Greenville Oaks. That's a part of the legacy that we have as a church, is not shying away from disagreement, not shying away from hard conversations, because those conversations actually make us better. To watch as those two and many others through the years could have conversations of disagreement, could have conversations where we see things differently but still have a deep love for this church and for God and for the kingdom. That's a legacy that I walk away with and that this church will always have. But I'd be remiss this morning if I didn't talk about, I guess, the most important and my favorite reflections from my time at Greenville Oaks, and that's student ministry. And when I think back on water balloons and dance parties at the back-to-school retreat, or Go Deep retreats where students are deeply sharing their stories with one another, and leaders who spent their time blessing these students. When I think about the word legacy, I think about these students that I had the privilege of serving with and ministering with and learning from. And even students that were here before my time here who are now blessing their own churches, who are blessing their own communities. And I think about students, one in particular who started her own nonprofit while she was still a high school student, to help homeless and poor people. I think about the way students would come together and make signs for one another and go to each other's games and events and bless each other in that way. I think about students who would sit with others while they were hurting and crying, and even at a young age would still be there for them and bless them and love them and serve them. And the cool thing is, watching my daughters and their friends and these students over here, they're still carrying out that legacy today. And that is one of the coolest things for me to see. The Greenville Oaks as a church is passing that on and carrying that on. And those are the memories that I will always take with me. And those are the things that you as a church can be proud of, because you as parents, you as leaders and volunteers, and as a church helped make that happen because you were trusting and following Jesus. And so a phrase I reflect on with Greenville Oaks, we haven't had it up on the wall back here in a while, but it's the phrase, fully devoted followers. My reflection of Greenville Oaks is that we have been a church that has always striven to make fully devoted followers and to help those followers pass on the love and the trust in Jesus to others so they can be fully devoted followers. So this is what I want to leave you with this morning. Keep that going. In a world where there are plenty of people who are fully devoted followers of a political party, or fully devoted followers of a school sports team, or fully devoted followers of money or financial gain or whatever else is out there, my hope and my prayer is that the legacy of Greenville Oaks, 35 years and continuing on, will be one that continues to make fully devoted followers of Jesus above all else. Thank you, guys. Thank you for blessing me and my family. Thank you for the privilege to serve in ministry here. Thank you to the staff and elders for your love for this church. And I will continue to pray that God will bless Greenville Oaks into the future. I love you all.
Good morning, Greenville Oaks. It is good to be with you. I wish I could be there in person to join you in celebrating your 35th anniversary, but I can't. But I'm glad that I'm able to send this video instead. My name is Wes Horn. I served as the youth minister at Greenville Oaks from 1995 to 2002. Actually, when I started, we were the Allen Church of Christ, just right over there in that white building. I am thankful to see how God has grown Greenville Oaks to be used in His kingdom. I'm thankful for the things that you have accomplished in Allen and the surrounding area and Collin County in North Texas. And so congratulations on 35 years. I'm excited to see what God is going to do in the next 35 years with Greenville Oaks. You know, I have really good memories of my time in Allen. I love the time I got to spend working with the youth group. I was blessed to be a part of Greenville Oaks when the first elders were installed. I was blessed to be a part of Greenville Oaks as the new building was built. And I can truly say that it was a blessing to be a part of those things and to watch God's hand in them as God gave us more and more opportunities to serve His community and to do good, not just in North Texas, but as we reached out even further. And so congratulations. I am proud of being a part of the Greenville Oaks family. I am thankful for how you have continued to grow and how you've continued to work for God, and I'm just excited to see what God is going to do with you and through you in the future. And so blessings on this day. Blessings on the work that you're currently doing. I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for how you helped grow me into someone who could continue the ministry in a different place, and I'm thankful that we've been partners through it all. And so may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may the Lord make His face to shine upon you. May the Lord be gracious to you and give you peace. Love you all. Have a great day.
Well, when Matt texted me with the invitation for today's celebration, I said, of course, and I teased him and said, can I preach? And of course, I was absolutely kidding, and then the next thing Greg and I get a text from him to come and share some reflective thoughts. So the last time I spoke in this way was here. But I thought this is a great opportunity to share what I've been thinking for the last 3.5 years. First off, I miss all of you. I truly do. You all hold a very special place in my heart, and often you don't fully realize it until you're gone. And although my life is full of goodness now, I miss this community of faith, and I really miss Collin County. I really do. I have often shared that Greenville Oaks is my God story. And we all have God stories, but some just stand out more. And coming to Greenville Oaks was one of those times. In 2006, when Adam Looney contacted me to ask if I might have an interest in applying for this brand new children's ministry position, I said, no, I don't think so. But between phone calls from Steve Belden, Jose Chacon, Bonnie and Bruce coming to visit their daughter at ACU, and by the way, could we meet for dinner? This was in a 3 to 4 month window that I continued to say no. And then in July of that year, I am at my friend's house in Colorado, who are great friends with Kelly Carter and his family, who had just moved to Canada from here, calling them and asking to talk to me. And at that time, I realized, oh God, I hear you. I will explore this. Well, once I took that step and interviewed with the Children's Ministry Steering Committee, opportunity to meet the outstanding staff, spend an evening with our elders and their wives, it was clear what God was speaking. And my house sold in less than a week in Abilene, cash settlement, and perfect house found in Allen through the help of Sharon Colfall. God's grace brought me here. I see now that my insecurities of the divorce that I thought for sure would keep you from hiring me, my thoughts, can I lead a children's ministry again? Making a huge move away from where I'd been living for 20 years, and my concern for my mother making this move with me was just my excuses. In a very short time, I realized we were also here for my mother, and the last 8 years of her life was so full of meaning and love for so many of you, and you know who you are. I entered into the land of Greenville Oaks Faith Community that above all loved God, their family, and ready to serve others surrounding them. The entire staff was so welcoming. You saw immediately the love that they had for the people they serve and the endless hours they give in making sure this community of faith thrives and grows together. And I'm going to have to repeat this story one more time, Greg. There was only one time I questioned, what in the world have I gotten myself into? Was that very first meeting with Adam, Keith, Galen, and Vance, where Galen and Keith proceeded to turn every subject into a long conversation of debate, and what should have been a 1-hour meeting turned into 2. I walked out, looked at Denise and Bonnie and whoever else was in that office in shock, and they just laughed. And I think, is that still going on? I have no idea. We grew close, sharing our joys, our sorrows, our concerns, our prayers. And if I had not come to Allen, I would have missed out in having these people in my life. And of course, children's ministry was my love and passion, and the privilege to watch our children grow in faith with a team of leaders, teachers, helpers that have developed young hearts' love for Jesus. And this continues through the leadership of Samantha and her team and all involved that surround the lives of these children here at Go. In preparing these thoughts, it dawned on me that during my time here, I had some first challenges of life. This was a place of healing and growth from my divorce, my mother passing away, cancer in 2013, 14, and 17. This is who Greenville Oaks is. You enter into each other's lives, helping and healing one another. You celebrate those defining moments of life with one another. You are a community of faith that cares, that prays, and takes action to serve. This is your strength and who you have been since the first day these church doors opened. And for me, I am so grateful that 12 years of my life was in the presence of all of you. I look back at this time as truly a very holy moment.
Thank you for being here, Marty. And you too, Greg. Oh, no, so grateful that you guys have come, and thank you for sharing. I'm going to invite the Nelsons and Sullivans to come on up on stage with me. Just for you guys to know, in case there was a question, we've got a little panel discussion that we're going to be having, and no, Galen and Keith are not a part of it because we couldn't trust them to behave during the panel discussion. So no, we didn't invite them. And yes, that is still going on, Marty. We just ignore them a lot more than you guys did back then. We just move on. What a great morning it's been, and we've got a little bit more in store for you. We're going to spend just a few minutes sharing the story that many of you may not know, that I didn't know, all the details. We get the nice chairs, you guys get the stools. All right, we're good, we're good. Donna, Kathy, you're good. There's a story here that God has been telling for 35 years, but it started in this really small little moment in history when a couple of families had a dream, had a vision that God had placed on their heart. And so I want us to spend a few minutes listening to these two families. These were two of several families that took that leap of faith, that stepped out of the boat and trusted God. And here we are 35 years later, bearing the fruits of that. So let's take just a few minutes. Let me quickly introduce Donna and James Nelson, if you do not know them, Keith and Kathy Sullivan. And they are what we would consider founding members of Greenville Oaks, have been around here for a long time. And so I've got a few questions that I want you guys to answer, if you don't mind, and share so many of the details and the story that so many don't know that you guys were a part of. So first of all, I want to understand a little more about the moment that someone decided there needed to be another church in Allen. What was that moment? James, you want to start?
Sure. You'll have to realize that in 1986, there were only 18,000 people in Allen. Excuse me. And it was about to bust. There was one traffic signal in town at Main Street in Greenville Avenue. That was it. There was nothing on the west side of Allen except McDonald's and a Chevron gas station. That was it. And a big flag. You may remember that. A lot of young families were moving to Allen, and we got to kind of know each other through meeting at different places. And everyone that we talked to was going to church outside of Allen. Some were going into Richardson. We were going to Plano, McKinney, Dallas, you name it. We were scattered. And we kind of scratched our head and said, you know, we need a church in Allen. We need a place where our kids can go to school with the people they go to church with. And we need to be involved in this community. and families needed a place to go to church. So we got together one night, about 10 couples, at our house around our dining room table, and we just talked about the possibility. And about 7 of the families that night said, let's do it. So we agreed to meet in one another's houses on Wednesday nights. Huh? Yeah, Wednesday nights only. We'd go to our regular churches on Sunday. And that lasted for about 3 weeks. We were having 45 people in our homes. And half of them were kids, if you can imagine that. So anyway, that's kind of what happened. After 3 weeks, we had to have somewhere else to meet, so we moved to a daycare center. It's still there on the corner of Rivercrest and Greenville Avenue. We met there on Sundays. We had a little portable building outside, and in that building were about 100 folding metal chairs that we had bought from Sam's. We had to carry those in and out every Sunday and every Wednesday. So we did that. So that's kind of how we got going.
Keith, Kathy, you guys, who were these people that became a part of this church? Where did they come from? How did you guys connect, and what's the story?
We had, of course, a relationship with some of them, but Allen was growing with a young couple, so there was a lot of young couples would come in, and we would know them through they started going to church, or we know them through their schools, and then they decided that they were looking for a strong youth and child ministry, so they would leave. So they can come in and leave. So we knew a lot of them through the church. Then they would leave, and so we finally decided if we could get another church here that would emphasize a little outreach into a child's ministry. And so we knew quite a few of them as they would kind of pass through Allen and go into someplace else.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Kathy?
We had a group of friends that we loved, that we respected, and we were devoted to. And God put us together. He made it work. We were happy, we were devoted, and we loved what we were doing. Going to a daycare, putting chairs up, putting chairs back, cleaning with pine sol every time we went in, every time we went out. It was cleaner than when we got there. But it was a joy. It was an absolute joy that God had given us together.
Yeah. Donna, when we were meeting earlier this week talking, you shared something with me I thought was really cool. When we were talking about just, there was so much that went into creating a church every single Sunday and doing the church experience with people, and yet there were no paid staff. There was nobody who was working full-time. Everybody else had jobs. This was all volunteer. And I said, how did you do that? How did you do it? If those in this room have never been a part of anything like that, how did you guys do that?
It really wasn't that hard. When I look back, I think about Galen and Sharon went off to Brazil many years ago, and they talk about they had a year or so of practicing and getting ready and planning. We kind of just kept going. We'd all go out of town to church, and then we'd end up meeting for lunch somewhere, and we'd say, we really need to be going to church in Allen. And so that got us started, and we all knew how to do church. We were all already doing church. Our only concern was for our children that were like 7, 8, 9, 10. We were going to start a church, but we were taking them away from a established church that had youth ministry and things. So we wanted to make sure everything we did was to grow for them, a church that would be working for families and children. So many of the people that were here, when I look back, I know it was God doing it, but the 8 or 9 couples that started, well, the next Sunday, another couple had moved here from Connecticut, and we knew them from ACU, and they just happened to show up. They just moved here, and that was a coincidence, wasn't it? And they were very talented. So we had people in the church. The guys could preach. The ladies and men knew how to teach. We just did what we were already doing other places. We just did it together here.
Okay, so you shared about the fact that you started in homes. You eventually found a little building not far from here, actually, that you began meeting in. There was the daycare center. How many people at that time was the church, give or take?
First, I would like to say that our memories may not all be the same, but I was thinking at the most 100 maybe at the most when we decided it was too small for us, and we did that. But I would like to say the people that we were attracting from out of town, they were the leadership in their church. You know, we ended up, God sent us. We'd get in a meeting and say, well, we needed to start doing this. Then somebody would say, hey, I'll do it. We never had to assign anybody anything. We'll just volunteer. In the cleaning, obviously, I did less than some of our wives, but just jump in. Then whatever we did, there were people there that were just ready to jump in and do it. But I would say about 100. Then we realized we need to be someplace else, a little bit larger.
Yeah, and so you made a move to. You eventually recognized that you did want to try to bring in some trained ministry people to begin helping carry some of the load of responsibility, and you actually eventually brought in the very first youth minister, youth intern, and then eventually the very first preaching minister. Is that correct?
Actually, our first minister came to us. We were at the shopping center, Bethany Shopping Center. Bryson DeChambro could hit a drive to it. It's right over here. But we had to remodel that. And I think, Keith, before we left I was looking the other day at some numbers at the child care center. We had a record attendance of 114 one Sunday.
I became the counter at that time.
And you still do a great job today.
Still doing it.
35 years later, you had to use more fingers as we grew, but it still works.
And that was a full center, too. And we had potlucks about once a month, too, so that was nice. As far as staff, we hired our first preaching minister, Bob Burgess and Liz. They came to us while we were in the shopping center. One little side note, we had a couple of older people visit us one Sunday in the daycare center, and it turned out to be Mike and Gaynell Kellum's mother and dad's scouting out a church for them to come after they finished their residency in Alabama in just a couple of months. So the first day we moved into the shopping center, Mike and Gaynell Kellum showed up, and that was a happy day in the church. We had our own family practitioner, you know.
I would say that the real exciting part was that I was around 40. Of course, Kathy was a lot younger than that, but I was the oldest one, and a gray-headed person come in our building. It was pretty exciting. And one more thing. Usually you hire a preacher first and then, your youth minister, but we were so dedicated that we're going to take care of our youth and our children that we decided, us older people me and Paul Billingsley and Don Webb and some more could do the preaching, and the first thing we wanted was the youth director.
And that was the official, Barry Wingfield was the official full-time youth minister that was here at the church. Okay, I want to transition quickly to eventually you outgrew the shopping center. You'd reached the point that it was no longer sufficient. An opportunity was presented with an existing church here to take over a building, the Jupiter Road Church of Christ. And so tell me about the transition from the shopping center into a more official location.
The Jupiter Road Church building became available, and this was really an exciting time in the life of this congregation. It's really hard to explain, but that building had red carpet on the floors and red cushions on the pews. and the walls were kind of a blonde paneling. So nearly the first thing we did was rip up the carpet and sell it to some people that rented houses, and they put it in their rent houses. And we stored the pews over here in an empty building, and we eventually sold them to a church in Arkansas. So, and some of you may have them still in your homes. But
you said it was a big deal. Was there any anxiety about that? Because it was definitely a financial commitment. There was a significant shift to, we're now in a facility. We are, as opposed to bouncing around from a daycare in a metal building in a shopping center, the legitimacy of that. I mean, what was the feeling?
The feeling was we needed some money.
All right.
I talked to a friend of mine who's a realtor in town. Some of you might know Mike Williams. And he knew a guy, an old gentleman, that wanted to loan somebody $100,000. So we said, maybe we can get that. So we did, and we paid him back quickly because, it was growing so fast, the contribution was increasing, so it didn't take long. But we took that money, we put blue indoor-outdoor carpet in. We had portable pews. I don't know if there's any still in the building, but they were a light blue, and 3 people could sit on each pew, and they rolled around. Our youth could have a great time in our auditorium because of the space. Anyway, we redid the kitchen. We had to re-roof the roof. It was an exciting time. And Donna, you tell something while I get this out.
What? Oh, okay. I'm going to go back to Gaynell and Mike's story. Y'all don't understand. We were all in our mid-30s. The oldest person was probably Keith. And he might have been 40. So we didn't have any elders. And, we're all old Church of Christ folks here. We needed elders. But none of us were mature enough or old enough or qualified. So the Sunday at the daycare that Mike's parents and Gaynell's parents showed up, I promise you, every one of us were like, these people are here. And we were having a potluck that day. We were so excited they stayed. And you could tell they knew the church songs and everything. These people were almost qualified before we met them. And found out they were just checking us out. So still no elders. That was something we were hoping would happen. We just had to eventually grow elders until somebody came.
To talk about the worry part of it, but by that time we had already decided that God was leading us. I mean that was it. Everything we did, it seemed like, well, I'm not sure we can do that. Well, then God would provide us, and well, that's a lot of money. Well, then God would provide us, and so by the time we got into the Jupiter Road building, I think we were pretty well convinced that this all we were doing just following God's lead.
I love that. I love that. Kathy and I confirmed the date on this. The year 1993 was a big day. In 1993, you hired a very, very unknown man named Keith Maloney. We call him Grandpa around here now. But back then, he was an incredibly young, handsome, inexperienced, still mostly bald, but it's okay. That's not the point. That's not the point. In 1993, you hired Keith Maloney. Do you remember when Keith came?
I do, and what a blessing. If anybody
Amen.
knows Keith Maloney, he is.
Yes, absolutely.
He came in with love in his heart, with his precious wife. God was so good to us, so absolutely good to us, and he just brought everything he had that we needed, and that we needed to hear, and we still to this day love him very much.
He and Cindy were exactly what the church needed at that time, for sure, for sure.
Early in our history, we decided that we wanted to emphasize small groups. We worked through that we were not going to meet at Sunday night, which was pretty unique back in those days, and we'd emphasize everybody going to a small group. although we did keep one person just in case. But and then as a result of that, we kind of got tagged as they're the liberal church. They're a liberal church because they don't meet on Sunday night. So that was. But even today, we still believe that small groups is the way a church can grow and stay together.
Absolutely, absolutely. James, share what you're fixing to share with me with us, because earlier this week when we were talking, it really struck a chord with me that you felt this connection with something from the early church.
Yeah. If you haven't caught on, times were exciting. Everybody was doing things. Like he said, they were volunteering. Reminded me of the church in Acts. And I just want to read these verses because it reminds me of so much of the way it was at the Island Church of Christ in the early days. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. It's kind of the way it was. I don't think I've ever been part of a church where it was that way. I mean, this church is that way too, but I'd never experienced it like that. It was a great time. And, I want to say one thing before we close. We're just people like y'all. We just kind of fell into this, It never was us. It was God doing everything.
Amen.
So praise to God.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I want to ask one thing. If you were a part of the Allen Church of Christ during those first three or 4 years, 86, 87, 88, would you stand up? If you're here this morning and you were a part of that early church, stand up for just a minute. Stand up. Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you for having the courage to step up and to step out and to step in to what God was doing. As James said, this was God working. God was the one doing this work, but you were the vessel in which he did the work through. And so thank you for the sacrifices. Thank you for giving up. Thank you for doing. Thank you for the cleaning. Thank you for all the things that you did to help, because a few years later, this church would eventually find a piece of property here at Greenville Avenue and what would become Prestige, and a building would be built, and the church would continue to grow, and another building would be built, and the church would continue to grow. And we're standing on the shoulders of so many people for 35 years who have given so much to serve and bless and do great work in this community, and we are thankful. Today is about celebrating. It is about giving God all the glory, but it is about celebrating the men and women and the children and the teenagers who've been a part of this journey for so many years. And so we're grateful that you are here. We're going to continue on in our worship, but I want to take just a moment and I want to pray. And I want to thank God for what he has done and is doing and continues to do. So let's pray. Father, we are grateful for the fact that today is here. But God, today is your day. It is for you. It is all about you, and it is about the incredible work that you're continuing to do in this place. God, thank you for those families 35 years ago that said, we want to do something to bless. And thank you for the opportunities. Thank you for the guidance. Thank you for the resources. Thank you for the way in which you continue to lead these families as 6 or 7 families grew to 10 or 15 to 100 people and to hundreds more. And thank you for the thousands that have been blessed through this church here in Allen and throughout Collin County over the years, God. And I pray that we will be a church that continues to bless for another 35 years. God, give us the opportunity to be your hands and your feet to serve and to make a difference in your name. And God, we thank you for Jesus. Thank you for the salvation that comes through him every day. And may we live our life because of that love that he showed us. And it's in his name that we pray. Amen. Let's stand and let's continue our worship.